Welcome to the First Lutheran Church podcast, produced by First Lutheran Church in Janesville, Wisconsin. We are a congregation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America who are seeking to embrace love's adventure together. In this podcast series, we explore some of the contours of that adventure through conversations with friends and members of the community who are on the journey with us. We're glad you've joined us.
Hello, everybody. This is Amy Hartsaw coming at you live from her office at First Lutheran Church here in Janesville, Wisconsin. And I have with me a very awesome guest that we've been having fun getting ready for our gig next Thursday, September 28th. I have with me Zachary Peterson, violinist extraordinaire, also violin builder extraordinaire. A little bit of background about Zach before we launch into the questions. Zach is a private violin teacher in Beloit at the Dolce Music Academy, and he also teaches at Janesville's very own Napton Music. And we actually had you play at our church last week, September 17th, for our two services. So thank you so much for being here. How you doing?
Doing right fine. Thank you very much.
Nice. So folks, you got to come on September 28th because we're going to do a really cool gig where you get to hear that voice again. Janisa in Janesville, 6 to 9 p.m. Be there. So, Zachary, let's just dive right in. I just wanted to ask you quick. So, how did you start in music? Like, what's your musical story?
I started with the school music program, looking for something to do after school in about 5th grade. So they had come around with the drum bugle corps at first, but then I took that slip home to Ma, and she said, "Oh well, that's too many nights." We'd have to do Wednesday night for the whole year, summer, and they're very strict with schedules. So I would have had we done that. I guess I would play trumpet or bugle.
Ooh!
But we passed on that, and then the next thing they brought in were the orchestra instruments. So that's how I decided to start.
Nice. And you've studied at several different places within the United States and Canada. And one of these places was Roosevelt University in Chicago at the College of Performing Arts. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And was that there that you had a chance to work and be coached with by Yo-Yo Ma?
That was after I graduated from Roosevelt, and then I had gotten into Chicago Civic. Some people did them at the same time, but I didn't. So I did 2 years in Civic after Roosevelt, and usually twice a year we would do a big project with Yo-Yo Ma. He'd come and work with us, and he would have us break off into splinter groups and play Brandenburg, and they'd usually send us to outreach. We'd play at the Chris Kringle Mart.
Oh, cool. I've been to that.
And all sorts of stuff, so it was always a big deal. So
the Chris Kindle Markt is that's the big market in central Chicago, right?
Yeah, right downtown.
Right downtown. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness. And when was this? I wonder if we actually ran into each other.
This would have been I graduated in 2014, so it was from 14 to 16. 14 is when I was in Civic.
Oh my gosh, I might have actually heard you play because, folks, I was living in Wisconsin and I was visiting a friend in Chris Kringle Markt.
Well,
That's cool.
Potentially it would have been a big thing, I think, because they had the whole orchestra down there and they'd have heated tents. And then, so if you remember an event with Yo-Yo Ma there, it would have been us.
Oh my. Well, we're going to have to go check. I'm going to have to ask my girlfriends, be like, hey. So I did have a fun question. What is the worst piece of advice that anyone gave you when you were starting out as a musician or in the middle of your musical career?
Well, I think that the worst advice, and it's still given to this day,
okay,
is professors who kind of look down upon people who can't support themselves on music stuff alone. And I was told that, if you really want to be in the business, you have to, don't go down any other career paths. You have to, whether it's teaching or performing, you have to make your money from that. That's what makes you a professional. The reality is that it's just very hard to do that. If you can do that, it's fine. But I think that going forward in the way the world is going, that becomes less viable every day, and just like kind of encouraging people to be creative with how they make music, and if they can make it a viable way to make money. If, and the reality is a lot of people get around that by, they'll often have a partner or get married to somebody who's not in music. So, and that makes it possible to do it. So then when it's just bad advice, I'd say, because a lot of people kind of find ways around it so that they're making their personal money from performing, but they have help, whether it's from parents or from spouse or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the idea of this kind of, being looked down upon if you have to go work something that isn't music related to be able to do the things you enjoy, I think is outdated, and it's disingenuous. And I think people should just figure out how to balance their life the best they can. And it doesn't make you any less of an artist if you have to, no matter what you do, to bring, to survive.
I agree. I mean, I have a dear friend. I just talked to her. She was on she calls it, she made landfall. She's actually a director for a cruise company called Azamara, for anyone interested in doing cruises. And she is a singer, and she did cruise ship singing for a while until that actually she really was realizing, you know what, I know I'm not going to be able to do this into my 60s. So she got creative and learned how to run a boat, and now she's now the captain of a ship, and she still gets to sing.
Well, that's the thing. So say, for instance, if you can do something that's more efficient making money, and then you can choose the projects that you do instead of any crumbs that come your way, are you really, is that not going to make you a better artist in the end? And not to say we're all in that position where we have to take the crumbs. I certainly do.
Oh,
but
sure.
I think that if there's a way out of that doesn't involve music, I don't think people should be looked down upon. It just makes sense, because then it's like, hey, if I'm going to play or do something, then it's something I want to do, and then you might have money to support that as well. Exactly.
Well, actually, what's really cool is that you just took a piece of really bad advice that friends I've been given as well, which, interestingly enough, is changing. It's actually changing. And I think it's because people our age are now the professors, and we're all like, hey, you know what? You're going to have to be creative. So,
well, that's the thing. Like, there was that gilded era where the other people came from, and the economic realities were just different for the people who taught us.
Right.
So.
Right. That's a beautiful way to put it. Absolutely. So speaking of being creative and thinking outside whatever boxes that are in front of us, you actually build violins. I've seen you debuted the Chunk.
Oh, I named it after an internet meme. It's the Big Chungus, because it's a big ugly
Chungus.
Fiddle I made.
That's it. Yes. Yeah, you debuted it at First Lutheran's the classical event, because everyone got sick.
Yeah, I just brought it up and made stuff up, and then just took over the stage and used this opportunity to be weird in front of your all your Madison folks. I got a kick out of
kids.
it because it's like, I know these are the kids that are like the upper echelon, and their parents are like, yeah, we gotta do this proper stuff. And I knew that, and I was like, I want to see if I can, kind of like freak them out a bit, with some stuff.
Well, actually, it worked. There's actually a young viola player, remembered you, and he's at Indiana. He's at one of those places, but he took your words to heart, and he's like, I'm gonna keep going forward, but I'm gonna keep this Stillman's words at heart. Plus, he also loved the Big Chungus, and I don't know if he follows you on TikTok, but I will see if he does.
I don't think I was doing it too much then.
Okay.
I started doing that more recently.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of friends, TikTok, Zachary Peterson Violin. Again, it's Zachary Peterson Violin. His TikTok is amazing. What I've seen, I'm on there. Ta-da! So there's a little bit of that, but also there's, you do a lot of reels, you do a lot of Irish stuff, and I want to hear more about your Lego violin. Like, how did this get started?
All right, so I had an idea a while ago because I started with YouTube, which I want to get back to, but it's just kind of, I'm trying to build like a little bit of a audience just to promote, because if people know who you are, maybe they might be interested in lessons and stuff, and you can do things remote and everything. So,
oh yeah,
it's a little trickier because it seems like there's just like a lot of people on TikTok, and so I was making those shorts and stuff, and I had this idea. It's like, well, what if I made a fully acoustic violin out of Legos? And
so cool.
I did that and made a whole video about it, and it was a real challenge to do that acoustically. Now, that's not the instrument I use mostly for my TikToks because it's kind of hard to play.
Oh, use the electric one?
So after that, I thought, well, an electric one is actually pretty easy, and people have made like electric guitars and stuff with Legos that have been glued together, and then and mine is very crude by comparison. But I'm like, well, if I've done the acoustic, the electric, I can have more possibilities with. And so I took that and basically just put together a big, long rectangle and with one of those Lego backing sheets and mounted up the bridge and stuff to that. And then I bought like a distortion pedal at Napton, and that pretty much is what seems to be the most popular thing I do. It's not nothing I do is that popular, but it's
2,000 views is popular.
Well, you talk to some of the kids in the high school is like got like 20,000 followers from like doing their dances, and I don't think they'd agree. But for my I'm pretty happy with it, and
well, good.
So it's just like, so you put on, so it sounds like a little bit like a rock and roll guitar, but with the violin, sustain and everything. And so I do the Irish music, and I'll do like just little themes from famous classical pieces and jazz them up a bit. And it's, people seem to like that. Okay. And then, like I'll post, if I can take advantage of my rehearsals with like Amy or Ian Nee, I'll be like, oh, can I just record this, and I'll just do it on my phone and throw it up there too. So, anytime that I think I got something that sounds pretty good, and that's kind of the beauty of that platform is it's a little bit more casual and that's kind of like, I see a lot of my colleagues, they go more into they'll try media projects and stuff, and it's the very heavily produced and classical music tends to go in that direction. You're trained to be very,
for sure, like
I don't know what the word would be, just very hyper focused on quality and refinement.
Yeah, very polished.
But and that's a good thing, depending on what you're doing, if you're making an album, if you're making a music video. But if my thing is that, well, I'm kind of a nobody, it's going to take me like 3 weeks to put out something even half that good. But, the nice thing about TikTok is you can just, I play well. I know I'm trained in that. I can just turn the camera on and utilize stuff that I would do anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
exactly.
People are interested in it. And
exactly.
It's, and then maybe that gives me time to come up with bigger ideas for more polished stuff. But if I was just posting like always stuff that has a lot of time, I'd be posting like once a month, if that, and then it would be, potentially to nobody.
Right.
And that's got
to keep the followers following.
Yeah, it's and I don't know much about this stuff, but I know enough to know that it's just kind of like hit or miss. So you kind of have to throw a lot of things at the wall, and so that's kind of what I'm trying. I'm sure it'll fail spectacularly, but at least I'm having fun doing it. So,
and I don't think you're failing spectacularly. I think you're doing very well. This man, ladies and gentlemen, is so humble. But the other thing I was going to tell you is that I have a dear friend. His name is Rene Barbera. He's a Rossini tenor, and he just moved to Paris, so he's doing quite well for himself. He actually throws up TikToks of him warming up.
Oh, there you
go.
Talk
about brave. Like he's like, hey, I just want to see how the notes are doing. So I'm just going to like plunk a note, sit here and sing for you with the window open behind me. And I'm like, that's so refreshing. Because for me as a voice teacher, I get to kind of watch someone warm themselves up. And I've known him since graduate school. But I think it's neat that he does this a lot. He doesn't throw up just his polished performances at the big houses. He'll warming up on a stage, warming up in his apartment, warming up on a train, Well,
and that's the point, I think, of why that
really
works.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
Because I think people, I think a lot of people in classical music don't want you to see that. They want to be seen as like infallible. And I think people want to see, the human side. It's not about like just failing spectacularly, but just that it's like, maybe it's not 100% like, but we kind of are used to,
polished.
In the media industry, just hacking things to death so that they're like almost inhumanly perfect, and it's moving more in that direction as we speak. So having that
could be.
I think people should do like what your friend is and start to show the human element and try to get away from that, we'll piecemeal together the ideal performance,
Well, and, he talks about, too, and I'm sure I don't know if you've experienced this in your experience in Chicago with the Civic Orchestra, but when he makes recordings, there's actually a movement afoot, because there's a gentleman named Paul Jacobs who's an amazing organist. He teaches out at Juilliard. He does unedited performances of big organ works. And he, warts and all. I mean, and not that there's huge mistakes in them, but sometimes if you're listening really carefully or if you have the score in front of you, you can be like, I think he made that measure up, as you're listening to the Passacaglia and Fugue. Mm-hmm. But he said those are the recordings that are most purchased, are his unedited. When he says unedited, blah, 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 he's like, they don't sell out necessarily, but he's like, everyone wants to hear those versus the whole, okay, that measure didn't go right, so we're going to plug in that measure, as you say, the piecemeal.
Well, I think you can be more risky.
Exactly.
Right? If you know that.
Yeah.
And that's how they used to make recordings before splicing, and I'm glad to hear. I imagine it's a cultural thing. Nothing happens in a vacuum, so the ideas that I've come to, I'm sure, like you said, they're happening all over, because it's just like, why not? Like, why does it have to be, if this is what would happen in a live performance, why should we fear like the reality of it? It's not that it's, we'll prepare it well, but if things happen, that's part of it. And you can still do the polished one too, if you want like a kind of a reference recording or something, but I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it's actually good, and I bet you, some of the most magical musical things could happen in performances like that.
I think, and I must admit, my favorite performance of the Passacaglia and Fugue is Paul Jacobs' unedited version. It just sounds like his soul. So that's really cool that because some of the things I really enjoy about your TikToks are that there is an experimental side to them. And it's something you can't see other than in a live performance. Because folks, I will tell you this now, if you're listening to a CD of a polished performance, there is soul there, because musicians, their soul comes through no matter what. But sometimes like a high note is edited. Like if the tenor didn't quite hit it, they'll re-record the tenor so that that note is perfect and pristine. And he has to hit it perfectly and pristinely. But it's different when you're live. It's just there's a weird wall. I call it the weird wall for lack of a better word. But well,
I agree.
Oh, I love it. Wow. Well, let's do one more question. You know what? This is friends, I just love doing this podcast because I just find out so much. What is your life's motto in a nutshell? What do you enjoy? What do you enjoy about music? Your life's motto, and it doesn't even have to be about music. It could be about cooking. I mean, what your life's purpose, motto, get you going?
Well, I think that what I try to think about these days, and it's the motto that I try to hit, not that it comes natural at all, and I don't think it comes natural, is that we tend to, as people, worry about things that if everything was taken away from us, which has happened in human history, inevitably we would think are pretty insignificant, and we will live our lives based around these things. And one of the things that I've tried to do is, like with the TikToks and stuff, a few years ago I wouldn't have done it because I'm like, well, somebody might not like them. And I changed my mind on that because it's like, well, it doesn't matter. And so whether that's a risk taking or just like, so I guess the thing is that if you ever watch the movie, I guess I'll put it in the form of a movie. If you, it's a tragic movie but very useful.
Yeah.
The Dead Poets Society.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite films. Okay, The Dead Poets Society.
So I guess the motto in that movie, and what I would say is the Carpe Diem, and like there's two qualifications, you live for the day, but that you're striving to do good things, because you could easily corrupt that and say, live for the day that's best for me. And but you also have to say, I want to do that with no harm or as little harm. Obviously we can unintentionally harm with anything. It's just part of life, but that we try our best to make the world a better place, but to also live in a way that in 20 years, if the world's turned on its head and we realize that all these things that we worry about that keep us up at night didn't matter in the first place, which has happened. Imagine the people and that's not just hypothetical, it's going on now. Like,
sure,
we live in a bubble here, but imagine people who live in war-torn countries. Imagine
Libya, like with the floods.
Yeah, absolutely. Natural disasters. And I guess I try to think about like, well, do I need that? Because that's always a possibility for any of us. And do I need that to be a wake-up call, or can I balance that? Can I try to do the things I want to do within reason and also survive and be practical, but not be so practical that you strive for all the things that don't seem to matter when things unravel, and that can happen on a personal, like a few years ago, my mom passed away, and actually just a little over
a year?
It's not quite a year.
No, I was going to say, it was kind of recent.
Quite a year.
Yeah.
And just seeing kind of, with going into these rehab centers and stuff, and these horrible places, and it makes you kind of think, and seeing like somebody's health go downhill, and it makes you think about the things that really matter.
Sure.
And but it's hard. Our nature resists that at every turn. We're scared generally, because it's a survival instinct. And
sure.
But the thing is like, you got to fight it. And if there's a place you can find joy or provide joy to yourself or others, or do the things that you feel like, oh, I would have been afraid to do that, but the things you kind of dream about, but you're like, I'm too scared, I don't know what people think.
Mm-hmm.
They're worth considering, with the right amount of caution.
Yeah, they are.
So that's I didn't do well on keeping it brief. I'm sorry.
Oh, are you kidding? I love it. I was going to say, thank you. Well, I think we are out of time, but just to kind of recap, friends, I really want you to go check out TikTok. I never thought I'd ever say that in my life. Go check out TikTok. Check out Zachary Peterson Violin. And I will say this, from the videos that I've seen, these videos do bring joy, and they do bring a sense of fun and a sense of whimsy and a definite creativity and your soul through for us.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, friends, please go to TikTok, check out Zachary Peterson Violin, and thank you for listening to this fun conversation. Zachary, thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. First Lutheran Church is learning to become genuinely inclusive, thoroughly engaged, externally focused, and relationally centered as we seek to live intentionally like Christ in the world. Embrace the adventure with us. You can find out more about us on our website at flcj.org. We welcome your questions and comments, which can be shared through our contact page. We're also active on Facebook and Instagram.